Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm parent coach, mother of four, and your host, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where you will learn that even for parenting experts like me, there is no such thing as a perfect parent, and that fabulous behavior and amazing relationships are right on the other side of that realization. If you're working your butt off to do right by your kid, honor yourself, and go beyond the BS around you, you are my person, and this podcast is for you. Full disclosure, I'm a sometimes potty talker, and we deal with the challenge of raising kids here. This podcast is for grown-ups, so stick your earbuds in and let's do this. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you again this week, and I got to tell you, I am going through my own really intense moment in my Enneagram journey on top of teaching these courses and talking about it with you guys all on the podcast. I, behind the scenes, have been really going through it. And so that's it's a very bizarre experience recording these episodes and teaching these workshops and mini retreats and stuff like that. And really disseminating information and introducing people to this stuff, while at the same time in the background I am just really like spending hours every day like pouring through information and confronting myself and everything. So I actually had a little bit of a moment with one of my practitioners a couple of weeks ago where I was like, do I even have any business teaching this stuff? Because I feel like every minute that I'm learning, I am learning how much I didn't know or I don't know, and then still teaching. And it's this kind of like, I think maybe the omnipresent dilemma of being a lifelong learner, I suppose. Right. So, and that kind of segues into, well, two things. Let me back up and say, still a couple weeks from when I facilitated the Living Enneagram in-person mini retreat here in Denver, and such great conversation, such great questions that came up. And that's why, I'm bringing them forward to you in these podcast episodes. And that's what we're going to explore today. One of these great questions. So when you come to one of my events, whether it's in person or remote, one of the things you'll get, and if you're watching the video, I'm going to hold it up here and you can see it. One of the things you get is this little booklet that I made myself, which I put as the title, The Enneagram, A Map of the Universe. And it's a really great little booklet that just gives you a super quick introduction to the Enneagram. So like the first page is really just says, welcome to the Enneagram. And we talk about the centers, we talk about the instincts, we talk about the growth journey for each type. And then if you keep going through the workbook, you see each type has its own sort of 2-page spread. And on the left-hand side of it is sort of the typology of the type. So I'm showing the one in the video right now. And you'll see all these different things on it. Things like what is the core motivation and the strategy of the type? What is the basic fear of the type? All of those things. And there's a little section, if you're watching the video, I'm pointing to it right now, that says childhood experience. And it talks a little bit about what it felt like to be a kid for this type. And then you go through, and it's for every type. You see this like 2-page spread and everything. It's really handy. It's sort of like a really cursory reference place where you can kind of see all these different ways of engaging with the Enneagram and things about the Enneagram laid out. So you don't have to hunt around and flip around in books and stuff like that to be like, wait a minute, what about the instincts? And what about like, what's the vice of the one? What's the passion of the one? What's the fixation of the one? It's all laid out there for you. So this is partly a reflection of my Ennea type, is that I love to gather information, lifelong learner for sure, but almost always whenever I get deep into any subject, I get to a point where I'm like, I really wish there was a resource that had this in it. And I wind up like combining all of the really great pieces of information that I find really important and useful from all these different sources and put it into one little thing. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, we're Jewish, and maybe like 20 years ago when we started celebrating Passover here, and I was the host, I looked around for a Haggadah that I liked and I couldn't find one. So I took 3 Haggadahs that I liked parts of. And this was back in the day where you'd use like a Xerox machine. And I made photocopies and cut them and taped them all together. And so now we have like a Kaplan family Haggadah that is different than any other Haggadah you'll ever find anywhere. So I have been doing that my whole life. And that was sort of the impetus for creating this document. But what happens every time that I lead an Enneagram workshop or training or retreat or whatever is parents, if there's parents with me, they love to find out what their type is, but then they also start to maybe imagine or see if they can figure out what their kids' types are, what their partner's types are, and stuff like that. And if you do know what your child's type is, like maybe they're older, maybe they've already gotten into the Enneagram, maybe you've um done this work with them or something like that. If you do know what your kid's type is, you're going to flip to that in this book and you're going to see childhood experience. And here, I'll read you my childhood experience from the one's point of view. So remember, the one is sometimes called the reformer, lots of other words for it, the crusader, the perfectionist, the idealist, the improver. It's all about morality and wrong and right and being good and trying to make sure that you don't go, to the dark side. Basically, that's the crux of the one's personality. And this is what the childhood experience blurb says in this little reference guide. These children felt heavily criticized, punished, or not good enough. Rules or people may have felt inconsistent. As such, they became focused on being good and not making mistakes to avoid condemnation. The principal message was, you must always be better than you are. The message they longed to hear was, you are good already. Now, for me personally, as a one, that rings super true. But what parents get when they read that is, oh my gosh, I didn't criticize or punish my child. I never told them they weren't good enough. My rules were consistent, and I never told them that they had to be better than what they are. And I told them that they were good all the time. Why would my child feel this way? And that is what we are going to talk about today. So I've already given you a little peek into my confession. I will double down on that confession and then give you a confession like B today. So like I said, I am really like, I think it's easy when things are going well to talk about, how the journey of personal growth or self-discovery entails confronting yourself. It entails feeling really hard feelings. It entails sort of breaking yourself down almost to build yourself back up again or to graduate to a new level. And that's all true. And when you're in it, it is not an easy thing to experience at all. And I will say that because this modality is so precious and important to me, and it's a huge core to the work that I've done, and it's led me in a million magical directions that I never would have found without it. I'm constantly studying this and working with new practitioners and trying new aspects of it and going deeper and deeper with it. And when you do that, every once in a while, you stumble upon something that basically just destroys you. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm a hot mess. I'll tell you that right now. And yesterday, at the time of recording this podcast episode, yesterday, I had a 2-hour long session with this practitioner that I just started working with maybe like a month ago. And I just basically was he basically just told me all of these things about myself, which were true and things that I hadn't observed through the lens that he was pointing them out to me in, that basically make me almost can reconsider who I am or how I've engaged with the world. It's almost like I think I say every time I work with him so far, if every session we've had, at some point during the session, I've said, like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, you've made me, I'm more confused now than I was when we started. It's that deconstruction piece, like dismantling who you are, letting go of your identity, realizing that you're way more attached to stuff than you thought you were. It's awful and it's excruciating. And that's where I'm at right now. So If you're in a similar place, solidarity, sister or brother or whomever. And, I think what keeps me going through all of that is just, it's worth it. I know that it is. I've gone through enough sort of like identity obliterations over the last 20 years of this kind of work that I have proven it over and over to myself that that what's on the other side is so much better than the thing that led to this whole, you know, house of cards imploding. But that's what it is. And so, it's really easy to talk about when you're not in it. And when you are in it, it's like, no, but for real. So I'm in the for real right now. And I would say to take it back to this concept of the childhood experience, second confession, like this is really hard to grapple with. And I know 3 of my 4 kids' types, and I read their childhood experiences. I wrote this stuff. One of my kids is a 1, which means he had the same childhood experience that I did, even though he had completely different parents than I did. And it's gut wrenching to read or to understand or to truly come to terms with the sort of suffering that human beings manufacture for themselves in order to become themselves. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the childhood experience. So I've been there for sure. It took me a really long time to be able to read about my child experiencing being heavily criticized or punished or feeling not good enough or feeling like, his world is all topsy turvy and that he's obsessed with trying to not make mistakes, and it's awful. I hate that for him. And plus, especially since it's the same type I am, I know firsthand how miserable that can be. So I don't want that for him, and I hate that part of how he has come to experience the world that way is as a result of the childhood that I created for him. But I want to offer you something completely different to think about or to look at this predicament through. First of all, and I know this for a fact because I was very thoughtful about how I wrote this little childhood experience section of this workbook. It does not say that these things actually happened to your child, but that they experienced these things. And that doesn't mean that I'm gaslighting your kid. Like, it's perfectly true that probably I was critical. I'm a 1, so I'm sure I was critical at times of my son. The world is full of all of the perceptions that all 9 types have of the world. Those perceptions exist in the world. The things they're perceiving are extant here. And because of their unique lens, those are the things that they perceive about the world. So the world is full of criticism and judgment. That's a true thing. It's also full of a million other things. But if you're a 1, what you're going to take in is the criticism and judgment. That's just a true thing. It's your orientation to the world. So the first thing I always say when I'm teaching about this is the way your child experience the world. This isn't an edict on you as a parent. This isn't saying this is how you parented your kid and so your child turned out to be this Enneagram type. No, that's not the case at all. In fact, we know the Enneagram teaches us your type is your type. That's your nature, not your nurture. So I was going to be a 1 no matter what parents I received or whatever childhood I experienced. And whatever parents I had and whatever childhood I had, I was going to hyper focus on criticism, judgment, rules, right, wrong, blah, blah, blah. And so that was going to be the perception that I had or the experience that I had of my childhood. Um, so that's the first point to kind of remember about the childhood experience, that it's really not about the parents at all. Today, the last episode, I talked about the nurture that our children experience of us, which comes from our nature and nurture, right? We were born into the world with nature. We experience nurture. and doing those two things come together to create the parent that we are, and that is the nurture that we provide to our children. That's what we talked about last week. This week, we're talking about your child's nature. You didn't have nothing to do with that, but that doesn't mean you don't have anything to do with how that manifests or how that child develops a relationship with their nature and all of that stuff. You have a huge part to play there. But today, what we're talking about is your child's nature. And that necessarily means that they are going to experience these kinds of struggles, these kinds of challenges in their childhood, whatever type they are. So, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, a couple of parents were just like, but how can that be? Like, why does my child have to suffer? Why does my child have to experience this? Is there anything I can do to parent them better so that it doesn't feel like this in their world? And unfortunately, the answer to that question is no. That doesn't mean we don't try to be the best parents we can be. And we are sensitive, like knowing that my son is a one. I am very sensitive to how I give him feedback because I know that anything delivered to him harshly is going to almost be so painful that he can't receive it. And when we talk about anything in his life, he has such a huge morality fixation around it, and he gets very upset and angry about wrong and right and things like that. So knowing that he's the one helps me attune to that. And if I didn't attune to that, it would make it harder for him. So of course, I'm going to be sensitive and aware of what my child is going through. But the concept of like making it so that he doesn't have to feel criticized or punished or not good enough, that's not possible for me to do. And even if it were possible, it would be harmful to him. And now I'm going to talk about why is that. So it's not possible, but just let's pretend it were possible for us to wave a magic wand and make it so that our kids had none of these negative experiences of their childhood. They never felt criticized. They never felt ignored. They never felt marginalized. They never felt pressure to perform, whatever. I'm kind of just thinking about some of the different childhood experiences of the different types there. Let's just say it were possible for us to create that experience for them. By creating that, we would be making it impossible for them to become themselves. And that's kind of maybe now where we're starting to inch toward the almost spiritual side of the Enneagram, because what the Enneagram says is that there are 9 points, right? 9 points on the Enneagram, 9 types that we could be. I mean, I've actually there's like infinite types we could be, but that takes into account things like instincts and trifixes and wings, and we're not going to go there today. There's 9 points on the image, and those correspond to 9 sort of aspects of essence. You may have heard me talk about this before. These sort of 9 ways that essence could be experienced or described. So, for example, one aspect of essence, the sort of feeling of holiness or the sacred or divine, is harmonious. That would be the point 9. We know that essence feels like harmony and peace. Another way that essence feels is joyful and free. That would be the point 7. Another way that essence feels, or divinity or the sacred moments in our life feel, is they feel beautiful and deep and profound and authentic. That would be the point 4. So all of the points on the Enneagram correspond to one of these facets of essence. And what that means for an individual is that that's the sort of unique facet of the universe that you are multiple things. You are really attuned to that aspect. It's the aspect of the universe that you sort of lose connection with in your childhood. And because of that lost connection, you experience your childhood in these hard ways, these unique flavors of hardship. And then you form a personality around trying to regain connection with that point or that aspect. And we take it one step further. The personality is almost like this red herring. it leads us astray, right? So to use the point one, I often use the point one as an example because it's me, so I'm intimately familiar with it. My point is my aspect of essence that's at the point one is essential integrity, or sometimes it's called holy perfection. We know that one aspect of when we have those like sacred moments in our life, or we feel connection to something bigger than ourselves, one way we might experience that or describe it is it's perfect. It's absolutely pure and immaculate, and it needs no improvement. It's just magically, wonderfully perfect. And that is that point one on the Enneagram. And the the type one, people who have that type, that's the aspect of essence that they lose connection with through their childhood. And because they've lost the sense that everything is perfect, that everything's already good, not only good enough, but absolutely purely magically perfect, we lose the sense of that. You're trying to regain the sense of that by creating this personality that is leading you astray, because the personality of the one isn't actually leading that person toward reconnecting with this idea of like, oh, everything is perfect. No, it's leading that person towards this idea of being judgmental and critical and perfectionistic, with the false idea. The ego believes that if I can just get everything exactly perfect, if I can organize my underwear drawer just so, or if I can show up without ever making mistakes in my relationship with my child, or if I can just understand in this deep way exactly what the right path is and know and never stray from it, then I can feel that feeling of holy, essential integrity and perfection. But of course, that's not the case. We just become like super tightly wound and rigid and more and more constricted and tense and judgmental and angry and frustrated and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to do a quick review here. So, whatever point you are on the Enneagram, that corresponds to this sort of like holy aspect of the world that you lose connection with in your childhood because life on earth is hard. And then that leads you to experience your childhood the way that you do, which then leads you to craft a personality around that experience. And that personality thinks it is leading you back toward connection with your lost little puzzle piece, but it's not. It's leading you to an egoic version of that puzzle piece. So instead of leading me toward holy perfection, my personality leads me toward perfectionism. For the seven, instead of leading you back to holy freedom and joy, your personality is leading you more toward an egoic version of that, which is saying yes to way too many things, always having FOMO, wanting to do everything and not miss out on anything, and always keep your options open and all of that stuff. And any seven can tell you that that actually doesn't feel free and fun at all. Um, the same thing with the four, you know, that aspect that the four loses connection with is this like holy profundity and depth and beauty. And in the quest to feel depth and authenticity and beauty, the four winds up creating an egoic version of that, which is sort of like just dark, moody, melancholic, um uh sadness, frankly. And so you can see how all of us are on this quest. We're on this quest for our point, to regain connection with our point. And unfortunately, our silly little childish human systems create a personality that doesn't quite get us there, sort of misses the mark. So, what does this all mean about your kid's childhood experience? Well, it means that they have to experience this world the way that they experience it so that they can create their personality that will then lead them astray, and that they will then hopefully at some point in their adulthood realize has led them astray and sort of deconstruct it, which is what I'm doing right now, which we're all doing right now in our middle-aged moment. Um, and then kind of get back on the path. And from a big philosophical point of view, a lot of people believe that that's sort of like the meaning of life. Like, we're all here to reconnect with essence. Okay, well, that's another way of saying we're all here to experience God. Like, that's what we're trying to do eventually. We're trying to have an experience of satisfaction and joy and happiness and harmony and goodness and value and worthiness and depth and beauty and knowledge and omniscience and, clarity. All of those things, we're all striving for that. Those are all different aspects of essence. I mean, maybe it's a hot take or an uncomfortable way for a lot of people to say this, but we're all basically trying to get back in touch with God in all of our different ways. And a lot of people look at our sort of like messy, mistake ridden suffering that we experience here on earth as an opportunity for us to experience not God, so that we actually can fully experience and recognize God once we get there. And we can kind of pendulate back and forth between, this is what this feels like. Yuck. No, thank you. This is what this feels like. Holy cow, this is magical. And if we were able to wave that magic wand and take that childhood experience away from our children, we'd be robbing them of what is necessary for them to reconnect with God, which is experiencing not God, which is experiencing ego, which is experiencing earth, which is experiencing suffering. Just like you can never recognize day as day if you didn't also experience night. You could never recognize the sensation of being full if you didn't also have the sensation of being hungry. Just like everything needs its counterpoint in order for it to even have meaning or be understandable or experienceable or communicable. That sense of holy satisfaction and like communion, for lack of a better word, that we are all seeking in our own different ways, it would be absolutely unrecognizable, incommunicable, and unexperienceable were we not to also suffer. And so this is the conversation that we wound up having a few weeks ago here in my living room with all of these magical people who were just trying to come to grips with the fact that, like, but why? But why does my child have to feel this way? And what can I do about it? What do we do with this information? And what we do with it, I mean, frankly, at first, I can say from my experience, we suffer. We suffer to know that our children suffer. And then if we continue to do our work, we start to see it in a different context. We start to work on that acceptance that we were talking about. And you hear me talk about so often on the podcast. And eventually we can even not celebrate it in a toxic positivity sense, but yeah, celebrate it because it's all part of the horrible, magical, beautiful, hideous mess of being a human. And our kids get to, not have to, get to be a part of that, just like we do. And it's okay that part of their childhood is this painful experience. That's for them, not to them. That's happening for them. And all of our struggles are happening for us as well. So, I hope that makes sense. It is so challenging to talk about some of these deeper Enneagram topics. And so I feel like I'm constantly like sort of like iterating new ways of explaining this and communicating it. If it really struck a chord with you, if it lands with you, I really encourage you to reach out to me. There's so much that we could be doing together in terms of understanding your type, understanding what to do with that information, learning how to relate to the world differently, learning how to relate to yourself differently. So reach out to me. You have a million ways to get in touch with me. I'm easy to contact. Respond to the email you get from me. Comment on the video that you see. Click on the link to set up a consultation. All of these things are absolutely free, zero risk ways of connecting with me. And I can't wait to see you however that looks. Maybe you and I will have a one-on-one consultation. Maybe I'll just get a great message from you in my inbox. Have a great week, everybody, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.